A new Wordle puzzle is online. Click on the link to play.
Listening to the following video may give you clues. Please like and share the videos.
Bill Gates on COVID. I don't want to be a voice of doom and gloom. In an effort to convince the world that the COVID pandemic is not the end of the world, Microsoft CEO Bill Gates has warned that the virus could lead to even more devastation.
The company has warned for years about the threat of viruses and the need to increase surveillance. While there are many concerns, Gates has also warned that viruses pose the greatest threat to our world.
Bill Gates warns of deadly variant of COVID pandemic. Microsoft founder Bill Gates has warned that the COVID-19 pandemic could be just the beginning.
The billionaire philanthropist warned that this new virus could be even more deadly and transmissible than the original strain. He called for a team of experts to be hired by the World Health Organization to monitor the virus and spot future pandemics.
He also urged countries to continue surveillance of the virus despite the decline in testing. According to the World Health Organization's Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the world is not ready for the next coronavirus pandemic, and he has called on governments to assist epidemiologists and computer modelers to identify the new strains.
The billionaire has also called on governments to rely more on epidemiologists and computer scientists to help prevent the deadly variant from destroying the human population. Although he has long advocated for the need to prepare for pandemics, he also warned that the current version of the virus, COVID-19, was not the most dangerous.
Gates' TED Talk warned that the world was not ready for the next pandemic. In addition to calling for a global epidemic response team, he suggested a task force that would monitor any new diseases that might be coming to the world.
The World Health Organization has less than 10 full-time employees on the lookout for deadly new viruses. So in April, Gates floated the idea of creating a global response team.
He said that the team would need $1 billion per year. According to Gates' calculations, the cost of a COVID pandemic could be $12.5 trillion by 2024.
This is an enormous cost. Gates has warned repeatedly that the worst is yet to come.
However, the danger is still too great to ignore. Need for vaccines.
Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft and billionaire philanthropist, is putting money into developing a new vaccine for the COVID-19 virus. While only 2 vaccines are likely to make it to the final development stage, Gates plans to spend billions of dollars to build factories to make these drugs.
During testing, Gates wants to scale up production to increase the chances of success. But is this strategy right?
The Gates Foundation is funding a second wave of vaccines for the developing world. But despite its efforts, the Gates Foundation has come into conflict with the World Health Organization, which he sees as bureaucratic and inflexible and undercutting the private sector.
A 2007 memo from the Malaria Division's chief noted that the Gates Foundation's vaccine development dominance was undermining the agency. But despite the complexities, Gates's commitment to vaccines has allowed the foundation to build an institute to monitor and evaluate the quality of its products.
The problem is that the vaccine manufacturers would not optimize production for the rich and developing worlds. That is why they asked the World Trade Organization to allow vaccine manufacturers to make them available at lower prices to lower-income countries.
This would allow them to start local manufacturing, and dozens of other countries joined the effort as co-sponsors.
But there was one hitch. A major pharmaceutical company refused to produce the vaccines in low-income countries, so Gates Foundation has poured tens of billions into developing countries to support vaccination programs.
He says anti-vaccine sentiment is based on an outdated research paper. This study was discredited by the scientific community, and there is no evidence linking vaccines with autism.
Despite this controversy, Gates has given the world a much-needed boost and now wants to see billions more children vaccinated. Although many scientists and public health officials have welcomed Gates' comments on vaccines, his remarks on climate change and the impact of non-vaccines on autism were met with defiance by anti-vaccine commentators.
One of these commentators is Dr. Heidi Larson, who received funding from the Gates Foundation.
She also says that Gates has the moral authority to make such comments. The Gates Foundation's annual letter will only capture 1% of what is going on in the world.
Scaling back of surveillance. COVID is the next global pandemic, says Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates.
The founder of the internet giant has warned millions of Twitter followers that COVID could strike in December 2021. Then, in 2015, he warned that the world was not prepared for the next big pandemic.
While the number of COVID cases has dropped in recent weeks, a recent report by the World Health Organization, WHO, has warned that we must remain vigilant and take all measures to contain the disease. This is because the rolling back of surveillance could make us blind to the virus's evolution and patterns of transmission.
And if we fail to take precautions, COVID is sure to keep on spreading, evolving, and killing until it's too late. In an interview with the Financial Times, Gates said that the Gates Foundation will focus all its efforts on the COVID-19 pandemic.
He acknowledged that this pivot would impede the work of his foundation and could potentially harm his other initiatives, including HIV and polio eradication. Still, he did not rule out the possibility of scaling back surveillance programs in the future.
In fact, the Gates Foundation has invested millions of dollars in research and development for the development of surveillance systems, but this report is far from the last word on global disease surveillance.
A stronger global collaboration can ensure more effective surveillance and help prevent future deaths in major pandemics. And, with the new global cooperation between governments, disease surveillance efforts can be more effective than ever before.
However, governments and organizations across the globe must carefully balance these goals. To be sure, these efforts must be weighed against ethical considerations.
Vaccine-related conspiracy theories. Many people believe that Microsoft microchips are inserted into vaccines to prevent childhood polio.
While the concept may be ridiculous, the reality is quite different. Several companies have been sued for false claims about vaccines.
Gates also called on social media to make their rules about distributing false information and misinformation clearer. For example, a video claiming that Microsoft microchips are inserted into vaccines should not be spread as news.
Earlier this year, Gates publicly stated that he does not support the controversial vaccine. Yet he praised Dr.
Anthony Fauci and Dr. Francis Collins, the new directors of the U.S.
National Institutes of Health, and he expressed his excitement over President-elect Biden's new health team.
But is this truly the case? These questions are worth considering, as evidence shows that Gates and the Chinese government have a vested interest in vaccination safety. Despite Gates' recent statements, his warnings about global pandemics have not been well received by the public.
In fact, some anti-vaccine groups, such as Right to Know, have seized on the speech to attack him for advocating for vaccine safety. Some conspiracy theorists believe that Gates is using the COVID-19 vaccine as a global depopulation strategy to gain control over the health system.
During the anti-vaccine movement, Pastor Adam Fannin has latched onto the movement and quoted Microsoft founder Bill Gates as a source of funding for the COVID-19 vaccine. The Gates Foundation has also been a target of anti-vaxxer conspiracy theories.
The Gates Foundation has funded research on invisible ink injections, which is injected into the body. The Gates Foundation is funding a vaccine project aimed at improving the world, but this anti-vaxxer movement is largely debunked by experts.
Despite Gates' support for vaccinations, the anti-vaxxers have been circulating far beyond his own organization. In fact, it has been reported that conspiracy theorists have accused the billionaire Microsoft co-founder of murder.
However, this claim is inaccurate, as Gates' words are not distorted to include the 700,000 deaths linked to vaccines. And it's a myth that has been around for a decade.